Our next presenter is Armin Schneider. He's a PhD candidate at Brown University. He studied in Berlin, New York, and Leipzig. And he works at the intersection of German classical philosophy, especially Hegel, psychoanalysis, philosophy of mathematics, and set theory. He's going to talk about the problem of becoming in Hegel and Spinoza. Armin, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for making it possible for me to come here. Can you hear me, or is the feedback too bad? I just continue, assuming that it's okay. But it seems to be kind of bad. It's okay? Okay. Yeah, I'll just continue. No. Okay. It's better like this. I hope so. I just produce noise so that the sound, okay, seems to be good. I have a written text. I will just read it and begin now. It is a commonplace to address Hegel's relation to Spinoza in terms of the formula determinatio est negatio, that is, as a problem of negativity. A common response of Spinozists is then to insist that in Spinoza's work this formula is in fact marginal and that it does not capture the true kernel of his philosophy. Instead of defending Hegel against this justified rejoinder that his approach amounts to a distortion of Spinoza's philosophy, I want to suggest the inverse, namely that the narrow focus on the formula of negativity alone also distorts the true kernel of Hegel's own take on Spinoza. Hegel has more to say than just determinatio est negatio, and the climax of his so-called refutation of Spinozism is impossible to be grasped as a problem of negativity alone. Hence, I propose to approach this constellation not as a problem of negativity, but as one of becoming. And to carry out this perspective, I assume a distinction between an exoteric and an esoteric dimension of Hegel's text. Seen from this angle, one can observe that there is not only an exoteric and an esoteric presentation of Hegel's take on Spinoza, but furthermore that there is also an exoteric and an esoteric presentation of the problem of becoming. Just as the full extension of the response to Spinozism is only visible in the esoteric dimension, so the full extension of and complexity of the problem of becoming is only visible in the esoteric dimension of Hegel's text. And seen along the lines of this perspective, the challenge of Spinozism and the problem of becoming coincide. Furthermore, seen in full extension, the problem of becoming also turns out to include the problem of negativity. The latter is a sub-problem of the former, and one cannot speak of becoming without also speaking of negativity. And as is well known, it was Jacobi who introduced Spinoza to the debates of post-Kantian philosophy, and it is also Jacobi who provided Hegel with the formula determinatio est negatio. But it is again Jacobi who also allows to trace back the problem of becoming to be one of Spinozism in the first place. Since for Jacobi it is no less than the spirit of Spinozism which is encapsulated in the formula a nihilo nihil fit, which, speaking of theory, becoming, denies becoming. Nothing comes from nothing, or out of nothing there's no becoming. Hence, departing from the a nihilo nihil fit instead of determinatio est negatio allows to approach the problem of Spinozism as one of becoming, but which includes one of negativity, as is indicated by nihilo nihil. A nihilo nihil fit, this formula, an ancient formula as Jacobi writes, das uralte a nihilo nihil fit, is attributed to Eleatic philosophy, but it also captures a general disposition of ancient Greek philosophy. In its Eleatic signification, it speaks to the non-being of non-being, to the denial of non-being as opposed to the affirmation of being. Yet, furthermore, the formula also expresses a disposition within, which is common to Greek philosophy in general. In Greek terms, it would be rendered as something like ekmeon uden gignestai. And in the spirit of Aristotle's physics, this meon amounts to unformed matter, which is by itself incapable of formation, or which requires a form to become something. A nihilo nihil fit. Against this ancient formula, Christianity poses the becoming or creation from nothing. And from nothing not as unformed matter, but as truly nothing. A nihilo fit ens creatum. The personal God of Christianity introduces the figure of a power, a will, an act of creation, which sets an absolute beginning of the world, separating its being from the pure nothing out of which it is created. A nihilo nihil fit, a nihilo fit ens creatum. These are the two extremes between Jacobi's yes and no to Spinoza is to be situated. Nevertheless, it is neither a return to the Greeks nor a restoration of Orthodox Christianity which Jacobi is advocating for. Because with the ancient formula, Jacobi in fact captures modernity, the closed totality of thoroughgoing rationalism. Under its modern disposition, a nihilo nihil fit is equivalent, with a grain of salt, to the principle of reason, nihil est sine ratione. Nothing is without reason. And conflating the order of reasons with the order of causes, the formula a nihilo nihil fit amounts to absolute determinism. There's nothing which cannot be captured by the rational explanation of causal determination. On the other hand, Jacobi's objection to this absolute determinism is not grounded in relapse to traditional Christian faith. Much rather, in reverse, the objection seeks to ground faith in an immediate subjective evidence of acts of freedom, irreducible to rational explanation. In other words, Jacobi's yes and no to Spinozism concern different domains. While there is no possible objection to the closure of rational explanation, there is, for Jacobi, a necessary objection on the abyssal grounds of practice. Or while Spinoza's determinism must be affirmed as philosophically unavoidable, it must be negated practically, which means, in Jacobi's terms, that there can be no refutation of, but only a contradiction to Spinozism. Yes, to its irrefutability, no to its practicability. Accordingly, there can be no rational path, no demonstration or refutation from the one to the other, from yes to no, from determinism to freedom, but only a jump, a sprung salto mortale. Nevertheless, and in spite of its irrefutability, Jacobi points to the apparetic nature internal to Spinoza's philosophy, even though this does not suffice for a refutation proper. And this apparetic nature for Jacobi culminates in the figure of an eternal time, a totalization of time which as totality congeals into atemporal eternity. The aporia of eternal time does not, however, appear only as a remote, indirect consequence, but in fact it is latent already in what Jacobi had determined to be the spirit of Spinozism in the first place. A nihilo nihil fit. For Jacobi, this formula does not deny becoming as such, but only a becoming out of nothing. In other words, Spinoza does allow to think becoming, but only a becoming which itself has not become. And these are precisely the terms from which Jacobi's own non-demonstrative presentation of Spinoza departs. It begins, first, all becoming must be grounded in a being which has not become. And then 2, just as being, so neither can becoming have come to be or begun. So this unbecome becoming is the prefiguration of the aporia of eternal time, which Jacobi diagnoses in a different and kind of in the 7th addition to the letters, I think. It is therefore no exaggeration to say that Jacobi's introduction of Spinozism to post-Kantian philosophy is inseparable from posing it as a problem of becoming, since, according to Jacobi, the spirit of Spinozism resides in the ancient a nihilo nihil fit, but which amounts to the aporia of an unbecome becoming, of a becoming which is not becoming. Contrary to Jacobi's letters, Hegel's science of logic, in its progression from objective to subjective logic, claims to have accomplished the refutation, the so-called refutation of Spinozism. But this does not, as we know, have a merely negative meaning, just as Jacobi's contradiction was a yes and no. So Hegel's refutation, even though yielding more than only a contradiction, is a yes and no. Yes, the standpoint of Spinozism is necessary, but no, it is not the highest standpoint. Thus, the path of Hegel's refutation is at once the path further towards the concept. And more specifically, this refutation of Spinozism coincides with the genesis, or the becoming of the concept. In its full extension, the genesis of the concept is constituted by no less than the objective logic altogether, being and essence, doctrines of being and essence. However, that this is referred to as the genesis of the concept does not only retrospectively give a new name to the progression having led to the concept, but this name at once evokes the conceptual core of what it is the name of. The driving force of the progression from being through essence to concept is not just becoming, but a becoming of becoming, a becoming which itself is becoming. More precisely, in its core, the becoming of the concept is driven by the transformation of becoming into positing, setzen, and the reproduction or restoration of being out of this redoubled becoming. This perspective is revealed when Hegel lets us look back once again before turning ahead to the concept itself. And this is the quote on the handout. I don't know which number, but from the logic. Hegel. It is here, I think it's the second Hegel quote, quote, it is here as the content of our treatise begins to be the concept itself that we must look back once more at its genesis. Essence came to be out of being, and the concept out of essence, therefore also from being. But this becoming has the meaning of a self-repulsion, so that what has become is rather the unconditional and the originative. Now it's a crucial sentence for me, for this context. In passing over into essence, being became a reflexive shine or a positiveness, and becoming or the passing over into another became a positing. Conversely, the positing or the reflection of essence sublated itself and restored itself to a non-posited and original being. End of quote. Hegel calls the endpoint, the result of the genesis of the concept, an original being. And this formulation condenses a number of references and significations. Firstly, it refers the result of the progression back to its beginning, apparently to being, but whereas it is only in being a result that being gains its originality, so that its being a beginning is rather a mere beginning and a non-originality, as immediate being is not the original being which it is as the result. Secondly, as original in German, ursprünglich, the resulting being is German ursprüngliche Sache, and Hegel uses this dimension of language in many occasions, or some occasions. As original, ursprünglich, the resulting being is ursprüngliche Sache, and that is Ursache, cause. And it is precisely the relation of causality which in reciprocal causation is revealed as Hegel says, causality itself, as self-causation in the final result of essence. And thirdly, as original, ursprünglich, this result echoes a jump, a Sprung, but while for in ursprünglich, but while for Jacobi this was a jump away from yes to no, from irrefutability to contradiction, for Hegel it is inversely the immanent progression of refutation, which uncovers an internal jump, so to speak, an internal jump of, or the originality, Ursprünglichkeit of self-causation, through the movement of what Hegel calls refutation. And resulting in original being, the genesis of the concept is in its core driven by nothing other than becoming, but by a becoming which is itself becoming, as we read in the quote. not only is there a becoming of the concept out of essence and of essence out of being, but also becoming itself becomes other. It becomes positing, and as such is in fact is no longer becoming other, but returning or reflection. In the quotation, this conversion is not only spoken about, but it is being spoken in the two verbs becoming and restoring, because restoring is herstellen in German, which as stellen refers back to setzen or positing in the Latin ponere. So being became essence, as becoming became positing, but positing has restored or reposited, hergestellt, wiederhergestellt itself as original being. So as Genesis refers, the word Genesis refers to both becoming and Gegenteil and origin. The title Genesis of the concept captures the whole trajectory of becoming throughout being and essence as it results in the repositing, wiederherstellen of original being. And I want to propose that this utmost condensation of the genesis of the concept, which provides the key to approach Hegel's refutation of Spinozism as what it is, a response to the problem of becoming. And in the main text of the logic, it is the short section on reciprocity, Wechselwirkung, where the progression of the objective logic culminates to hand itself over to the concept. And here the turning of reciprocal causation into self-causation is presented precisely as the coincidence of becoming and positing. Reflexion setzen. What is thus revealed qua self-causation is what is thus revealed qua self-causation in its self-positing becoming is nothing other than Spinoza's causa sui. But what in the demonstrative order of the ethics is only presupposed as a definiendum of its first definition is generated in the logic as the last result of the genesis of the concept. So Hegel, in some sense, just arrives where Spinoza starts his first definition in the objective logic. Thus positing its initial presupposition is what allows Hegel to go beyond Spinozism and reveal substance as subjectivity. And that this revelation originates in the movement of redoubled becoming, as I tried to point at, is, however, immediately disguised again in the first summary of the genesis of the concept, which Hegel provides in the opening paragraphs of the subjective logic. Because here the movement from substantiality through causality to reciprocity is presented without any recourse to becoming. Well, becoming is only the title for this, but on the level of the content, he doesn't spell it out, this transition, as a rejoining of positing and becoming. And already within the logic, we therefore observe two dimensions of Hegel's text, serving either an esoteric or an exoteric function. The esoteric dimension does not, however, point to an unwritten doctrine. On the contrary, it is fully spelled out on the surface of the written text. Nevertheless, as soon as the text serves its summarizing, moderating, or exoteric function, the depth of its esoteric dimension is reduced necessarily and simplified so that naturally one dimension cannot substitute the other. Just a clarification with regard to the constellation I was talking about. So I take it that there are, so to speak, two summaries or recapitulations of the genesis of the concept, or the last bit of it. The first one in the beginning, or the first paragraphs of the introduction to the concept, and then once again in a very condensed version at the beginning of the concept proper. This is the quote I read, and the two are do different things and point out different things. And in fact, for what I tried to for the perspective I tried to suggest, in some sense, the first recapitulation kind of disguises or covers up that it's, I would say, all about becoming and becoming positing, and the two rejoining. The first recapitulation kind of covers this up and confuses this depth. But paradoxically, the second recapitulation kind of points to it directly by spelling out the whole trajectory of being in essence as a becoming of becoming, so to speak. But in a second recapitulation, of course, we don't read anything about Spinoza. So we have, in some sense, two different recapitulations which shed a different light on the previous passage from the Logic of Essence and produce a kind of a parallax, if you will, on perspective on this previous section. I think the microphone's going lower and lower, but it seems to be stable. Just do this. Yeah, it feels better. And of course, as you may have noticed, I used exoteric and esoteric in exact reverse meaning than in Plato. For example, in Plato, the dialogues are the exoteric text, and the teaching, so to speak, the supposed unwritten teaching is the esoteric dimension. And I want to propose that, in fact, it's the science of logic, which is the exoteric, the science of logic, which is, broadly speaking, the esoteric text, the pure doctrine, so to speak, and the lectures, Encyclopedia, Jacobi review are, in some sense, exoteric communications to an audience. Yes, and so it's a reversal, in some sense, of the terms, which is, I think, not just an arbitrary choice of mine, but also says something is of their respective Plato's and Hegel's philosophies, maybe, but that's for discussion. Okay, the exoteric reduction, which is already latent within the logic, leads to more and more obfuscating rearrangements in other texts, which, relative to the logic, need to be considered as exoteric altogether, if we make this distinction in the way I proposed. The logic of the Encyclopedia completely lacks the presentation of reflection, which in the greater logic introduces positing as the new mode of becoming within essence. Instead of accounting for the internal becoming of becoming itself into positing, being, nothing, and becoming are merely externally mapped onto identity, difference, and ground. And just as the opening of the doctrine of essence suppresses the movement of positing, so the opening of the doctrine of concept lacks any presentation of its genesis. Instead, the 1827 edition covers up this lack by introducing an external typology of a movement as transitioning, shining, and developing, übergehen, scheinen, entwickeln, a typology which can barely compensate for the immanent genesis of the concept, and which furthermore imposes with developing a figure of becoming onto the concept, in a narrow sense, which has no entering, in fact, in the text of the 1816 edition of the Greater Logic. So in the Greater Logic, there is no announcement as it is there is in the Logic of Essence. Now becoming is developing. This is imposition of the Encyclopedia logic, I would say, on the great small logic. Given and this typology mode of distinguishing becomings, so to speak, is a pedagogical device and nothing more. Given that it is lacking the presentation of both the genesis of the concept and its essential content, the becoming of becoming, it is no surprise then that the presto staccato of the small logic does not have any aspirations of refuting Spinozism. But also, also Hegel's review of Jacobi's writings from 1817, which contains an abbreviated version of Hegel's take on Spinoza in kind of a stile recitativo, free recombination of the elements and narrative, in a way, cannot keep up with the esoteric depth of the greater logic. What is here patiently worked through as a problem of becoming is reduced in the Jacobi review to a problem of negation. Determinatio is negatio. Spinoza rightly supposed the finite determinations or modes to be negation, and he rightly supposed their being in substance as their being negated, but he was lacking insight in the true nature of this negation of negation, and hence could not go beyond the affirmation of substance as, quote, undifferentiated and undifferentiable unity, or beyond substance in its fundamental determination of immediacy or being. Yes, I have another page which I might not be able to read. So to conclude, I just summarize and what I've said so far by saying that, in a way, the exoteric presentations of Hegel produce or give us a kind of photographic negative or an indirect trace, and point and through the absence of what constitutes, or through the absence, I try to point at they make it more clearly visible, maybe, and sharpen the perspective on what constitutes the actual backbone of the esoteric text, so the logic, so which I tried to spell out as a, or point at as a question of becoming in its redoubling in the logic of essence as positing. The following short section, try to sketch out basically how one could, how one has to, or how one could reconstruct the trajectory towards the reciprocity from this angle, from the angle of a question of becoming, through the becoming and positing. And in fact, one also if one takes this perspective, it becomes also clear in what sense the question of negativity is a subproblem of the problem of becoming, insofar, and my last sentence, insofar as, of course, as we know, the mode of becoming in the logic of essence is nothing other than the movement from nothing to nothing, self-relating negation, but which is not presupposing any affirmation of pure being anymore, as in the logic of being. So as a result, the climax of the refutation of Spinozism, so-called, in Reciprocity is both at once a coincidence of becoming and positing, which itself is driven or activated or working as a movement of negativity. Thank you.
Thank you, Armin. Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Am I on? Yes, okay. I guess my two brief points. The first point is, if you want to argue that Hegel does think that something comes from nothing, surely the place to look at will be the very beginning of the logic, where you actually have nichts. I mean, we've gone from sein to nichts, but then let's forget we've got reines nichts. And pure nothing, through its own purity and immediacy as nothing, goes back into being. And of course, that vanishing is already becoming. So I was slightly surprised why you didn't look at that. Maybe you could comment a little bit on that. And then, just very briefly, if I may, on the esoteric and esoteric, and particularly on that passage that you quote here from Hegel, I just don't know why you concentrate on becoming when you look at that passage, when you could just as easily have concentrated on positing. And it seems that you're trying to slip in an esoteric reading that privileges becoming. This is going to sound unfair, and I apologize for saying this, I don't mean it to, but it looks a little bit arbitrary, in that you could equally select the process of positing, and of course there's a whole lot of other concepts that are operating. So I wonder why you think, because although Hegel says here that becoming, the passing over into another becoming became a positing, it didn't just become a positing. Positing arises with positing reflection out of the movement that you've just described. And that's not just a becoming. There's something more going on there. So I guess, why didn't you start at the beginning with nichts? And then are you perhaps really overgeneralizing the significance of becoming at the expense of other possible concepts like reflexion, like positing later on?
Yeah. I think thank you for the questions. Maybe I wasn't clear enough. I think it's a misunderstanding, maybe. So first of all, yes, I mean the the first remark on becoming, this is the place where the formula ex nihilo nihil fit is quoted by Hegel, and of course, I mean, it's obvious that there we have the most simple form of the question, or Hegel's kind of rejoinder against, or like, yeah, his stance on, take on this formula, a nihilo nihil fit. Why didn't I go there? Because I think, on the one hand, everyone knows that, in a way that becoming, everyone, I think, here has read the beginning of the logic, and we know that there's becoming is movement from being to nothing and nothing to being, so I kind of presupposed that. And I tried to point more to the section on reciprocity, because I don't think that it's equally commonplace or equally clear to people that actually one could say that the problem of becoming culminates there in reciprocity. This is the final point. And
why does the problem of becoming
so, and this is this brings me to my second response to your second question. The concept of becoming for me is similar as Verstand und Vernunft in Kant. So Vernunft, there's a narrow sense of Vernunft, and Vernunft is also the broader term including Verstand. So we have two meanings of Vernunft, and in the same sense, becoming for me is, in a narrow sense, the becoming of being, but as its full structure, it's becoming and positing. So I understand the full concept of becoming, so to speak, to be both. And this is, I think there's textual evidence, or at least support in Hegel's logic, that we can understand the concept of becoming in this way. One evidence is the quote I just named, discussed. And also I understand the beginning sections of the logic of essence on reflection. I understand this to be saying, well, becoming, the concept, yeah, if you say the movement from nothing to nothing is the becoming in essence, then we have something like a different modality of becoming, but it's still, in some sense, a becoming which is not becoming anymore, but positing. So you see my point? I see the concept of becoming as having, being an internal split or division of becoming and positing.
Yeah, thank you. I understand. I guess I take it
so
into you, but thank you.
That sense,
Okay, one more short question. Yes.
Curious to hear more.
I think I was the one. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Thanks, Armin. It's a pleasure to meet you also in person, by the way. And I found this whole frame from that you had in Jacobi in terms of positing Sätzen and also your linguistic remarks, and it just reminded me that there is an interesting passage in Jacobi to Fichte which could challenge this idea probably a little bit, and it has also a linguistic dimension, because Jacobi just accuses the speculators, and especially, I mean, Fichte, the one who just starts with all this Sätzen, das Ich, and he says that the speculators, their Vernunft vernimmt nur sich selbst, und diese Vernunft vernimmt nichts, sondern produziert. And I think that if we just regard this accusation of Jacobi, I'm not sure that Jacobi would be agreed with the logic of positing, because it is producing. Es vernimmt nicht, es setzt its selbst. And I think that Jacobi was like just trying to refer and think Vernunft as Neuen, like Vernunft should just be able to vernehmen von etwas, aber nicht selbst setzen und produzieren. I will be curious, what would you say to that?
Yes. So I'm not exactly sure how to. Thank you for the question. I tried to find an answer. So the question is,
well, again,
yeah, no,
Jacobi just says they cannot be like, I just try to be sharp. They cannot be becoming for any logic of positing, because in that logic, reason posits itself, and it just cannot. It doesn't. Es vernimmt nicht das, was ist, sondern es setzt selbst als Vernunft. And this is something which Jacobi very sharply just rejects. And this is just to help to comprehend it. It's something which old Schelling just takes up when he just reproaches Hegel that Hegel has a concept of werden before there is something geworden is. And that's a kind of challenge of this logic of positing, which could receive, which could think, becoming.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I fully understand, but so and maybe I just don't have. Therefore, I don't have an answer because I don't understand the question fully. But so yes, I mean from the point of view of Jacobi, maybe the Hegel would still, of course, just remain in the self-productive movement of positing, self-production, so to speak, which does not in any way allow to arrive somewhere where Jacobi arrives in jump or in a practical settlement. And so in that sense, maybe for Jacobi, the self-productivity or self-positing as a becoming would be still completely enclosed and limited in Vernunft, if I understood you right. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
we
not
have
sure
time for 2 more questions. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Schneider. I liked your presentation very much, very dense and precise and important. My question is, I would like to force you maybe to go a step further. This whole idea of becoming is part of, so to say, the constitution of the beginning of the Ursprung, the Ursprung des Ursprungs. We constitute Bestimmtheit. So this is, so to say, what is happening in the beginning, and that evolves via the sequence, nothing, being, nothing, becoming. Therefore, my question to you is, if it's really a problem, so to say, den Ursprung entspringen zu lassen, why can't you say, or could you say, or reinterpret your talk in terms of a problem of beginning? Because a problem of beginning, because this moment of becoming is an intrinsic moment of beginning, and it is exactly here about the beginning in the sense of Ursprung des Ursprungs, or Ursprungs des Denken des Ursprungs. So could you even go further then? And then the advantage of replacing now becoming by beginning is that you would have a nice bridge to Hegel's criticism of the whole idea of beginning with definitions and things like that.
Say again the last
beginning with definitions, right? You can,
right.
And this idea of immobility. So this whole idea of beginning as the problem, whereas this coming moment is in particular important, of course, would, so to say, broaden, I think, and strengthen your position. Do you agree with this or not?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Well, just begin with the end, and I tried to point at this. Yeah, the last part would have been clarifying in this regard. The whole, like this dramatic inversion of the order, so to speak, of Spinoza's ethics and Hegel's logic is that's what it's all about. You can't start with, yes, causa sui, but not starting with the definition. And in some sense, I mean, the section throughout the subjective logic of essence, towards the end, the behind what's behind is not the definiendum, but the definiens, like the content of the definition. Causa sui is what we have heard it before. Existentia involved essentia involved with existentia, And this unity of essence and existence is what is to be constructed throughout actuality, but in exactly the reverse order, if, so to speak, as in Spinoza, that we don't start with that as a presupposed subject of a definition, causa sui, but we arrive there. So yes, I mean the form of cognition and the form of there's a canons as definition, demonstration is implicitly, or like in what Hegel does in the logic before, even though before he talks about it, already in the way he does the thing he does, this critique is operative, I think, the inversion of the order of demonstration and also internal order of the definition, of the first definition of the ethics. And regarding Ursprung, well, I think maybe short answer, I understand Hegel saying like that it's weird and confused, or at first glance confusing, that in the quote I gave from the beginning of the logic of concept, where Hegel speaks of the original being, the ursprüngliche Sein, as a result of the genesis of the. This is strange because we would say, okay, beginning is being and not at the end. But the whole point is that the originality, the beginning is not original, but it's a necessary abstraction. Also in the order of the logic, of Hegel's logic, we don't, and therefore retroactively, this the status of this being is has to be changed, and at the end of logic is erfüllte Sein, it's the same thing but different. Yeah, but I short answer would be like the originality can only always be accounted for as in the result, in losing it and going away from it, and this is the whole logic of reflection is kind of doing that in terms of negativity. Yeah, abstoßen von sich, also ankommen bei sich, the counter repulsion and so on. But then, yeah, okay, other question.
Thank you for your talk. If I'm not mistaken, your program is to substitute becoming for negativity as a commonplace in our understanding of Hegel's critique of Spinoza. Well, anyway, I suppose maybe you should take into account that becoming is a kind of dialectics. And Hegel explicitly says that there are three kinds of logical dialectics. Becoming is the first kind of dialectics, appearing in others the second kind, and development is the third kind of dialectics. So Hegel would say that Spinoza began almost in the end of the logic of essence with substance. So, well, and that's why Hegel uses the concept of negativity, which is proper of essence, for refuting Spinoza. Anyway, if you don't take into account that becoming is only a dialectic of being, with that kind of dialectics, you cannot think concepts like causality, substantiality, reciprocal action, modality as necessity. So all those or mode and attributes appearing or Auslegung des Absoluten, ways of existing, as it was said before. So to think those concepts according to Hegel, you cannot use the dialectics of becoming. It just doesn't work. So you must work with the dialectics of appearing, and then the dialectics of appearing is contained structurally by negativity, and that's why that's a commonplace that everybody agrees. It's you may use. It's normal to see people using other categories to interpret later parts of the science of logic. That works, but just to a certain extent. It does not justice to what is at stake. Well, and the second point would be about refuting Spinoza. You pointed the place is the beginning of the logic of the concept. And the refutation of Spinoza is there, you say very well, but it's not negativity. Okay, negativity is just a methodological form of this refutation. The refutation is simply what concept is, freedom and spirit, and that's all. The real refutation is just freedom, singularity, and spirit, or concept in general. Thank you.
Very short, if possible.
Very short. Second question, we would need a long answer, which I don't want to kind of give now. Regarding the first question, I would just reiterate and repeat what I said before. Again, I assume and I propose to understand the term becoming in its full extension and its full complexity as internally split, so to speak, in becoming and positing. That's my suggestion. And the term genesis of the concept, Werden des Begriffs, kind of legitimizes this conceptual choice, or like this view on the concept. Genesis of the concept summarizes, so to speak, these two modes of, this title summarizes these two modes of becoming, and therefore, when I spoke of becoming, so I don't see why I would be accused of using the logic of being mode of becoming, namely becoming in the logic of essence, to say something about what's going on there, because no, of course, I introduced it that way. The logic of the mode of becoming in essence is positing, no question. But, and this would be a rejoinder and a counter question, or like, yeah. I mean, Hegel himself, there are several places in the logic of essence where the problem, the question of becoming as such, as in the mode of being, is kind of resurfacing. And these are exactly preparing the rejoinder of becoming and positing, which is accomplished in reciprocity. So, for example, in ground or in the model in necessity, these are all passages where Hegel actually tries to make this visible as a structure of becoming, which is emerging out of positing, so to speak. And so this is not my imposed problem on Hegel's text, but I think it's in Hegel's text. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ronnie.